In my previous video, I had interpreted Shinji with wet hair standing next to a lake as a suicide attempt, a rhyming thematic beat to a later section of the movie. It's not. You see, if you type into Google why is Shinji's hair wet and then sift through AvaGeek's thread upon AvaGeek's thread where people are mostly affirming what I say, you'll come across some hard evidence denying this. A picture of a storyboard from End of Eva where a note is specifically made that Shinji's covered in sweat. Drenched in it even. Now, the bucket plopping in, this is the actual rhyming shot. It's a callback to Kaoru's head being popped off. You know, in case you didn't immediately make the connection to the location in Kaoru, then your brain would make the connection to this action. Thus still conveying the same meaning of the scene that I had talked about in a prior video, but excluding the suicide attempt part.
Alright, so I made a mistake!
No, wait, okay, never mind. So it turns out this mistake actually has layers? For some reason in my head, I confused perpetual summer with it doesn't rain. It does indeed rain in the post-Second Impact Evangelion world. I don't know how I missed this. I literally used footage of it raining in my last video. Okay, now we can go back to my old script.
I'm the bad guy?
Yeah.
How'd that happen? I did everything they told me to. Did you know I...
Pilot Evangelion?
Yeah. I helped to protect...
The world? When analyzing a film, especially one as artistic as The End of Evangelion, something extremely important is subtext, thematic parallels, and unique to End of Eva, human psychology. When I was about 10, I was way into Star Wars, and by extension George Lucas as a director. I made it an objective to watch and obsess over everything he had done. This included the student film, THX 1138 4EB, which is a fucking mouthful, and also the feature-length film that was made based upon it. Now, when I was younger, I took everything this movie at face value. So as a 10-year-old, if you asked me, I'd say this is a movie about Robert Duvall breaking an anti-sex law in a world where everybody's sedated and bald, and then having to escape that world under the threat of incarceration. Well, I didn't know the word incarceration when I was 10, but how'd you like that one? But upon reevaluation, looking deeper into it, this movie is as much of a caricature and critique of consumerism as 1984 is to communism. The economy functions off of buying useless crap they think they need to buy that really has no practical use, so they're immediately disposed of once they buy it. Cycle repeats, and the big corporations keep getting money. Mind-numbing drugs are standardized to squash individuality and rational thought. A hyperbolic idea of how we use Ritalin on children, or at least that's how I felt when I was on it. Religion is a series of useless pre-recorded messages that say nice things but don't actually mean anything or help anything, ending each sermon by saying that giving money to a corporation will make you happier. They literally build the dysfunctional robot police that oppress them. Likewise, The End of Evangelion on the surface level is a cool film about the apocalypse. And I'd even go as far as to say this is a badass, masterfully crafted film about the apocalypse, if my video about the first half didn't make that perfectly clear. But on a much deeper level, the overall idea of this is one of a very cynical and bleak message about learning to love yourself at the risk of losing everything and leaving your world in ruin. The show, Neon Genesis Evangelion, in an abstract manner showed Shinji learning to love himself. The movie, The End of Evangelion, shows Shinji liquefying the entire human race, only to realize all too late that he can accept himself as a human being and wants to keep trying to live. Even if that means he's left all alone with no one but the one person who represents how cruel humanity can be towards him. With a special thank you to the staff, Anno's companions, and a unique shout out to the lead voice actresses, the second half of this film, and likewise the video essay we're watching right now, truly begins. We are gonna go full-blown human psychological analysis here, so buckle up, my dudes! Actually, first let me mention something aesthetic. Rei's severed arm with protruding veins and tendons are fucking disgusting. For the film to then one-up itself by having Gendo sink his hand into Rei's body via her most vulnerable part, her breasts, is crazy, man. This also acts as a callback to when Shinji first groped her earlier on. However, her reaction here to even the initial contact is much different than her one before, subtly cueing us in on a character progression within Rei. With Shinji before, she didn't care, and likewise she used to show a genuine affection for Gendo, who she no longer cares for as symbolized by his broken glasses. Gendo wishes to become a god and reunite with his former lover by whatever means necessary, even if it means molesting children. Ugh. Another directorial note, I think it's really cool that space is dead silent outside of vibrations. That's something I've really only seen done in Akira and Space Odyssey outside of this. I know the movie Gravity does this too, but I haven't seen it. Likewise, I really like that Lilith isn't actually given a voice. She's merely left as this 1920s style text still. The brilliance in this is that her voice is the viewer's own unique interpretation. She's a god, and we cannot begin to fathom what a god would even sound like, or hell, if it would even speak our language. Not to mention, giving Lilith a voice would probably end up being super corny. Now let's examine this shot of Shinji's hand real quick. Shinji's hand is a consistent symbol throughout the anime. Your hand is a tool with which to protect others. Your hand is a tool with which to protect yourself. An instrument of revenge, a token of friendship, a symbol of personal strength and determination, a tool of lust. It's a means of harm, it's a medium to the unknown. Your hand has the power to end a life. Your hand has the power to commit actions even worse than taking one's life. Your hand has the overwhelming power to determine your fate, hold on to the past, and wield the fate of others. But above all else, your hand is the means of which you can act. Your hand and your individuality is your humanity. The ability to reach out to others as they reach out to you, although not a unique strength, is a powerful one. And it's the actions you choose to take with your hands, with your life, that determine yourself and the perception of those around you. This movie's ultimate message is one of learning to accept yourself, to learn to cope with suffering and loss, to grow up and mature. This is your strength. No one else is you. No one else can be you. No one else can live for you. This is your life, and you deserve to live it to its fullest, even if you're someone as pathetic, filthy, and disgusting as Shinji. Now, the unique meaning behind this particular use of visual callback is that he's helpless. He's wondering what to do. He's failed entirely, and it's completely his fault. Therefore, he's actually hiding himself away within his own source of power. What else can he do? Just be a fucking ostrich, dude. Actually, that's not true. Ostriches don't really stick their heads on the ground, they play dead. No matter what he does in this moment, the force acting against him is too great. He is completely powerless before God. Another symbolic image from this half I love is the shot of Gendo completely beneath Lilith. Contrary to literally every other time Rey and Gendo were seen on screen, Rey is now above Gendo, completely towering over him. Whereas before she was beneath him, and shot as being below him, she has now ascended, and he's become insignificant to her, worth hardly anything more than the same restrictive mask that limited Lilith's power. And Jesus, man, did I hammer it in that you should be watching this subject? Cause goddamn, man, her breathing here is really scary and chilling. I love it. With Rey's depiction here, we're now twisting the symbol of the waifu. Rey being the symbol of the perfect subservient Japanese woman, falsified dreams, lust, and desire have now manifested into something abnormal, disgusting, toxic, and mangled. But hey, Kairu's here, so it looks like Gay's the way. In all seriousness, Shinji is lowering his guard to him because he was the only other one who ever remained unconditionally nice to him. In keeping with the idealized human, Kairu is the perfect friend or boyfriend. You're always great. You're the only person I care about. I'll never hurt you and always support you. Like Rey, this is a metaphor for escapism into the unattainable for Shinji, who is someone unwilling to face reality and the cruelty of it. Also, just to clear this up in case you missed it before, Kaoru is able to be here because Gendo's hand had Adam in it. Rey's stomach ate Gendo's hand, and Adam has the same genetics as Kaoru. Look at that. The perfect girlfriend, friend, and boyfriend, all in one absolutely godlike massive package. Goddamn, dude, hope you're in the Giants. Now you see, the Geofront was the egg of Lilith, and the original birthplace of humanity, which is in Japan because nationalism. Now it's up to Shinji, as the human soul within Unit 1, the medium between God and humanity, to determine our fates, and whether or not we'll return to our initial birthplace as festering primordial soup. Or just Tang. The giant god being places him into a state of ecstasy once Kaoru lowers his guard, which from the looks of it is done by showing him erotic images of Asuka's tits. Okay, so this sequence is absolutely loaded with visual symbolism, so I'm going to attempt to break this down the best I can. Now for starters, there's the use of stage lights, and this undertone of hokey-ass music that sounds like it's coming out of a really old TV speaker. Shinji's entire life feels like it's been placed on a stage before an audience, both literally and contextually. It's contextual because the Dead Sea Scrolls have acted as a straight-up guideline as to how Nerve manipulates Shinji for the ideal outcome of instrumentality. There's actually just a dude watching him in one shot that you likely don't even notice until he slides away. So you see, contextually, Shinji was always under surveillance during the show. He's interacting with dolls here, the two of which are meant to take on a similar role to Rey and Asuka in his head. Asuka has always been someone who greatly struggled with valuing her individuality, and tries to distance herself from being a doll as much as possible. We've already been over Rey as the idealized Japanese woman, so I won't repeat myself. We only need to realize that Shinji doesn't really value those two girls as people, just as objects. I'll go into that more. The woman here, who looks a lot like Misato, is representative of Nerve, and comes to take them both away from him. Kinda like how at the tail end of the show, the Evas end up being Asuka and Rei's undoing. And also to kind of hammer in the sadness of Shinji being all alone. He wishes he had a mom, and he wishes someone would come to take him home, but he has no one. He's just stuck here at the playground by himself now, with no real bonds. Now once again taking some mind to our setting, the entire thing looks like a woman lying down. This could be perceived as a few different things, one of them being that women are a source of escapism for Shinji, so right now he's retreating to pleasure to oust the pain. It could also show immaturity, however, being a visual show of his desire for the affection of his dead mother, and likewise a desire for a simpler time when she was always looking over him. That said, it could also literally be seen as the Eva he's piloting, seeing as Unit 1 has the soul of his mother and he's within it much like he's within this busty playground. Now, I don't think I need to say the sandcastle is supposed to be Nerve, but what I will say are his actions against it are sort of meant to parallel his call to duty, like his consistent one, and also the one at the very start of the show. Thinking back, when he's first beckoned to Nerve by his father, it's implied he tore up the letter and then taped it back together. He likely had a furious reaction to it initially like he did with the sandcastle, but because he's weak and desires a feeling of companionship and being wanted, he rebuilds it, the same way he taped the letter together. The same way he constantly returns to Nerve despite how much it hurts him. Being a part of Nerve and piloting Eva is what's expected of him, and he'll continue to do what's expected of him. This might be a bit of a pull, but it's actually a lot like having to grow up and get a job. You know, you're being kicked out of your house, accepting responsibility and moving on. You gotta impress your parents, kid, you gotta earn their affection, you gotta earn their love. That pressure is societal, and I guess that makes Shinji a millennial. He sees Misato as unrelatable and disgusting, impure. She has sex, she drinks, she's been sullied, and cannot parallel his escapist fantasies of the pure, perfect woman. She will never be his doll. Asuka and Rei can, but they both terrify him. Social interaction terrifies him. Asuka's shown to be much more extreme in this sequence, as this is how Shinji sees her, as a rampant beast, but a very immature one, paralleled via crayon drawings to visually convey the childishness of all this. In general, his thoughts of Asuka tend to fixate on the sexual parts of her while she's speaking. Shinji deeply hides his emotions and feelings behind the veil of a stoic expression, when deep down he's experiencing an overwhelming amount of suffering that all stays bottled up inside of him. His father did the same, once behind an apathetic but cocky smirk, and later behind his crossed hands, as well as a pair of sweet-ass sunglasses. Shinji has an awareness of all of his shortcomings as a human being, but he blames the world and other people for all this. For being like him and hiding their feelings behind a mask, a smile. He's angry at them and at the world for not being tailor-made specifically for his wants and desires. But despite everything, despite how much it hurts him to be around people and to interact with them, he can't bear the thought of being left alone. He needs them. He needs their help. All those times in his life he's reached out to these people, practically begging them, only to be pushed away, to be hurt, to be burned further. Deep down, Shinji buries a burning desire to hurt all of them for this. Although projecting an air of pacifism, he's a man. He's an animal. These cruel people deserve to be punished for not being his perfect dolls. They deserve it for not saying exactly what he wants them to say when he pulls their strings. Asuka chastises him for running away to her, trying to act like a hero and pretending to care about her, when in reality he's only pretending to care about her to give her a reason to care about him. She feels like he's playing a very manipulative, sociopathic game with her, emotionally. And the killing blow to all of this is the word no. When we built up that Shinji hates people hiding from him, hiding their feelings, tiptoeing around the subject, abandoning him, he finally got a conclusive answer, and it's a cold, hard rejection. No, that's not what he wants. Directorially, it's brilliant how before he actually goes for the choke, all of the sound has stopped, letting us sit there and stew on the anticipation. Him sneering through his clenched teeth cuts through the room like a knife. At the start of the movie, Shinji sought Asuka's help and did something horrible to her. Now here we are, at the start of the second half, with him seeking her help and doing something horrible to her. And the fact that it's all taking place in his head is the only reason this physical retaliation is possible. For Shinji, as a physical human being, strangling Asuka is out of character. I mean, he would have done it long ago if it was in character, let's be real. But again, we're in his head. These are his desires. And all this time, all he's wanted to do was lash out and retaliate against all the people who hurt him and made him suffer. Like Ritsuko's mother when she's strangling the young Rei, the truth hurts. And sometimes we hurt the people that are truly just trying to help us with their honesty, because of how much we deny those very truths. Y'all should Google the lyrics for Calm Scissor Todd sometime. If you aren't giving them your full mind during the movie, and I don't blame you, this is a way better summary of Shinji's character than the actual opening to Eva is. And hell, maybe a little bit of Anno considering his mental state during the latter production of Neon Genesis. Actually, the first draft of this song was indeed written by Anno. In instrumentality, the object of your desires brings you to your finality. It's broadly represented as Rei, as she's representative of Lilith. For specifics, Hyuga gets Misato, Shinji gets Karu, Fuyutsuki and Gendo get Yui, Maya gets Ritsuko. This guy's a unique case. They never actually show him connecting with anyone emotionally in the show. So maybe we can see this as his dream being for the world to accept him for... let's say it's being a rock star. Look at that hair. Misato called the apparition of Rei Kaji, so we know what she saw. But we don't know what Ritsuko saw. I actually think we could take this literally, as in she just saw Rei. Like her work with Ava was of greater value to her than any human connection. The soldiers all had smiles on their faces earlier on too, embracing death. So I guess they saw their own apparitions as well before instrumentality kicked off in full. Now I know I just alluded to Gendo seeing Yui, but bit of a cockblock, Gendo's actually barred from instrumentality for being a cruel person, never forming bonds with anyone beyond Yui and by extension Rei. For doing this and for causing the most intense suffering of all to those who drew close to him. He's just the worst case scenario of Shinji, who until End of Eva was actively trying to form connections. Gendo found his waifu. She cared for him and took care of him, loved him even through his faults, but when she was taken from him he refused to move on. Until his own death he formed a toxic connection with a being no longer amongst this world, and severing the ties with all those tangible ones, even down to his own son. And if it wasn't clear already, that abandonment really fucked Shinji up. Ooh, okay, sound design note. I can actually hear the lances shredding into the surround speakers while Rei stabs herself in utter bliss of this penetration. When this pan shot happens, we can see Shinji's head on Rei. No comment. Half the lines of dialogue here are from the show. The other half seem like quotes from Anno's personal experiences, of things he's heard where people he's reached out to have chastised him and pushed him away. Perhaps even a few personal feelings are mixed in here, things he felt people wanted to say but never could directly. The noises heard here are those ubiquitous with Shinji, as well as Anno himself. The sounds of people, of crowds, the ambience of cars, sirens, the city. And on that subject, being outside must kinda feel like instrumentality to Anno. Especially in places as compact and crowded as Japan. He's lost and oblivious in a sea of souls. So let's stick Asuka, Rei, and Misato's actresses in the crowd for good measure, as well as some dummies of them. The familiar. These three girls being there are kind of symbolic of Japanese pop culture, and them being symbolic of their effect on it and their impact in the public consciousness. Or you could see it as a place to focus in the crowd, like a lost kid at a mall looking for his mom. The letters that flash on screen are more things deriding Anno and always worked so hard to build. Well, some of them. Some of them say stuff like Akari rape man or other creative complaints, but then others are kinda nice. They're letters of praise. Like he's experiencing this overwhelming stimuli of emotion. Both the good and the bad are just becoming this blur of opinions. He doesn't know if he did the right thing or not. He doesn't know how to react. No matter how many people say nice things to you and praise you for what you did, even the smallest negative inkling can trigger a feeling of self-doubt in anyone. And one bad reaction can suddenly become omnipresent in a sea of good ones. This theater's empty. There's like 80 jokes I can make here, but they're all too easy. But hey, one benefit to the Netflix release is us getting to see this guy flip us off in HD. Trains are Shinji's psyche. To him, these are equivalent to running away, to escapism. Hence why each introspection session occurs on a train. The old-ass manga entertainment release of End of Eva actually included a 6.1 surround sound mix for this movie, and scenes like this make me realize why. I love how the multi-audio channel effect here works with the voices. They kinda divvy up how they manage this. Sometimes Shinji's in the center while Rei's in the left speaker, as if we're Shinji and she's speaking directly to us, whispering in our ear. Other times, Shinji's voice will drift around in the audio channels as if he's floating in the sea of LCL, while Rei's voice stays anchored in the center as if she's omnipresent. Sex in Evangelion is the unification of souls. It's instrumentality beta. Two human beings interlocked with all their barriers dropped to give into their passion, lust, and desire. Something immediately driven home by this image of Rei in cowgirl position with Shinji, her hands sinking into his chest. For Shinji to reject her advances is to reject her, to reject instrumentality. It's to reject this world without barriers. I don't think this is meant to allude to anti-sex as a message. I'm more privy to this sequence actually being a message about compulsion and moderation. Instrumentality is like a big orgy, I guess. Fucking hippies. Despite enduring unspeakable pain, despite suffering human duplicity and duality, Shinji still desires human interaction. He still wants to try again to be a good person and to live. Even through all of this pain, he hasn't given up on his own self-improvement. He hasn't given up on the real world. After liquefying all of the human race, does he even deserve their companionship still? Well, that's for the audience to decide. If you saw my prior video, then you already know how I feel. But for Shinji's personal feelings, as far as that goes, he feels it's worth attempting yet again. Because even though now he can only feel pleasure, all those times where he suffered, at least his feelings were his. At that time, he knew his feelings were real. The music rises as the Eva withholding Shinji from this fate of instrumentality bursts forth from the Eye of Lilith, the Chamber of Guff reopening, flooding the earth with human souls. With her no longer being needed to nurture and coddle humanity within her perfect reality, God deteriorates and collapses. I mean Lilith. Lilith deteriorates and collapses. Unit 1 now drifts forever amongst the stars, as a constant symbol of humanity. Yui's final desire is fulfilled, allowing her to remain as that very symbol which will never die, even 10 billion years from now. When the Earth, Moon, and Sun are gone, Eva will still exist. A human being will still exist. Shinji was never allowed to know his mother. His memories of childhood, of her, all erased. This moment right here is the first time he gets to see her and speak to her, as well as the last. We could say the reason Asuka's the only other person present is because of her Eva. They do have mom souls in them. Shinji and Asuka could have literally been birthed from them. Or it could be her incredibly strong will to live as her own independent being. Either way, I'm glad Instrumentality has a proper healthcare plan to patch up all those boo-boos from her fight. Shinji and Asuka likely floated in from the buoyant sea of human souls and onto the beach. This explains Shinji's little look when he hears the plot. He probably assumes this will be another human, like him and Asuka, freeing themselves from Instrumentality. In actuality, it's just Rei, bookending her initial appearance at the start of the show with one final goodbye. Humanity no longer needs the coddling of God, so God is no longer needed. Live. Why does Shinji choke Asuka? Well, the easiest answer is the one I alluded to before, that he hates her. He's acting upon that same deeply rooted desire we've seen earlier within his head. But when Asuka, the symbol of Shinji's antagonism and pain, lovingly strokes his face, he's overwhelmed with emotions and doesn't know how to react anymore. He can't take the life of someone who showed affection towards him no matter how ubiquitous with suffering she is. These aren't tears of joy. They are the same guttural tears he sheds once Misato dies. Alternatively, or even overlapping, he choked her to confirm that he's in reality now, and not just in the Sea of LCL. The opposite of a world of bliss is pain, so he's inducing pain hoping to receive pain. When he's instead greeted with love, the realization that this is reality is what breaks him. Actually, I think in this scenario he could be crying because receiving a feeling of love doesn't confirm to him that he's escaped. He's sad knowing he's in a falsified peppy world, potentially recompensed by his sadness being real or by the words Asuka says to him hurting him. Or, Shinji's already been broken by everything that transpired. He's acting out of instinct, the same way he did when he jerked off to Asuka. Something in his head really wants to hurt woman. How disgusting. End. Black. Even as I typed certain parts of this, really bearing into the nitty-gritty of this movie, I am overwhelmed with emotion. No other work of media has emotionally affected me as consistently as this movie has. Not only is it amazingly directed and produced, it's a genuine, soul-bearing film that comes from the deepest part of its creator's heart, coming out in a more raw, realistic, and, God, I hate to admit it, but relatable way than I've ever seen before. I see a lot of what could have been myself in Shinji as a human being. A lot. I hate that. I hate that he's so perfectly realistic as a piece of shit and a brat. I've rewatched Hot Fuzz a lot because I love it as a movie. Apocalypse Now, Shaun of the Dead, Akira, Star Wars, RoboCop, LA Confidential, A Silent Voice, all of them, and more, because I love them as films, as crafts, and as experiences. They're wicked cool, and I want to share them with as many people as possible so we can talk about how cool they are, or even so I can yell at them when they don't like them as much as I do. But nothing have I so consistently revisited and still been both impressed, immersed, and emotionally distraught by than End of Evangelion. I can watch this movie anytime and be inspired. This movie is fucking art in every sense of the word. In every sense of media production, this is fucking art. In every sense of animation, this is fucking art. And all of it happened in 1997, same year I was born. I love this movie. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to me, and I hope this was able to enlighten you or intrigue you. Feel free to give me shit in the comments if I screwed something up, because you know, a lot of this shit is interpretation. And I think depending on the person you're talking to, a lot of things will be interpreted different ways. I'm not gonna be a fucking school teacher to you, who's telling you you can only interpret this movie the way I said it to. I got the fucking suicide attempt wrong at the start. I got that wrong. So, again, if you feel like anything I've said here is overextending or off the mark, or you disagree with it, or you have a different opinion, let me know. I would genuinely love to see everybody's opinions on anything I said here and even this movie. That would be fucking great. Once again, thank you, and enjoy this 80s J-pop. It's called Bay City. The song's name is Bay City. I'm using the end chorus of Bay City. Look up Bay City.